Have you ever laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling your mind race from thought to thought, unable to drift into peaceful sleep? You replay old conversations, think about tomorrow's deadlines, or wonder if you're living the life you truly want. Your mind becomes a maze of worries, a collection of echoes you can't quite silence. But what if I told you, there's another way to quiet this mental storm, not by forcing yourself to turn off your brain, but by inviting it into a deeper journey? Tonight, I want to take you on a gentle exploration, one that starts with curiosity, glides through centuries of human wisdom, and lands softly in a place of calm understanding. Welcome to Level 1 to 100 Philosophy Concepts to Fall Asleep To. This isn't your typical lecture filled with rigid definitions or dry academic jargon. This is a warm invitation into a universe of ideas, ideas that have comforted, challenged, and inspired humanity for thousands of years. Imagine it like a slow, meandering walk through a quiet garden at night. Under the moonlight, you encounter different statues, each representing a concept, a question, or a paradox that has shaped the way we see ourselves and the world. From the simplest questions, what is truth? Who am I? To deeper explorations of consciousness, free will, and the nature of reality, philosophy offers us more than just intellectual puzzles. It offers a mirror. It asks us to pause and really look at who we are beyond our jobs, our titles, our endless to-do lists. Philosophy is not just for scholars in ancient libraries or professors debating at universities. It's for all of us. It's for the mother who wonders if she's making the right choices for her children. It's for the young professional questioning if climbing the corporate ladder is truly fulfilling. It's for the retired craftsman reflecting on a lifetime of small but meaningful moments. When we hear the word philosophy, we often imagine it as something distant, abstract, a luxury of thought reserved for old, bearded men in togas. But if you strip it down to its roots, philosophy simply means love of wisdom. And wisdom isn't something we read once and put on a shelf, it's something we live, breathe, and practice every day. In this video, we're going to unravel 100 different philosophical concepts, layer by layer, like peeling an onion, each layer revealing a new perspective on life, each insight helping you let go of the mental weight you carry into the night. Some of these ideas might surprise you. Some might comfort you. Others might challenge your beliefs, push you to think deeper, to question more courageously. And that's okay. In fact, that's the point. Because when you invite philosophy into your mind before sleep, you're not just filling your head with random thoughts, you're preparing your soul for deeper rest. You're giving yourself permission to see life's big questions as friendly companions rather than threats. As we go through these concepts, I encourage you to simply listen, not to solve, not to memorize, not to judge. Just let each idea wash over you like a gentle wave. You might find that as your mind explores these ideas, it stops clinging to trivial worries. Instead of replaying that awkward moment from last week, you might find yourself contemplating whether your identity changes when your body changes, like the ship of Theseus. Instead of worrying about tomorrow's presentation, you might ask yourself, if I had to live this life over and over again for eternity, would I still choose the same path? Or maybe you'll feel a new sense of comfort in the thought that we're all searching for meaning in a universe that doesn't hand us a clear map, and maybe that's what makes the journey so beautifully human. Through these concepts, you'll travel from ancient Greece to modern science labs, from the dusty scrolls of Stoic philosophers to the sleek code of artificial intelligence researchers. You'll hear echoes of Plato's cave, where shadows are mistaken for reality, and glimpse the comforting, terrifying freedom of existentialism, where you alone must create your own purpose. And as each idea unfolds, your mind will start to relax, not by shutting down, but by expanding into something bigger than itself. Your thoughts will drift into wider horizons, slowly untangling the tight knots of daily stress. Think of tonight as an invitation to explore a mental galaxy while your body rests softly under your blankets. Think of it as a journey that requires no ticket, no packing, no planning, just an open heart and a willingness to wonder. I promise, you won't be tested on these ideas. There is no right or wrong way to listen. You're free to drift in and out, to fall asleep mid-sentence, to wake up and pick up wherever your mind left off. And if you do drift off, that's perfectly okay. It means the concepts are working their magic, gently carrying you from the noise of everyday life into a more peaceful, reflective state. This video isn't just about learning philosophy, it's about feeling it. It's about letting ideas become soft pillows for your mind, cradling your consciousness as you drift into rest. So tonight, instead of counting sheep, let's count questions. Instead of resisting your thoughts, let's guide them into a starry sky of ancient wisdom and modern wonder. Instead of fighting for silence, let's welcome gentle curiosity. Are you ready? Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of the day melt away from your shoulders. Close your eyes if you'd like, or keep them softly open as you listen. Let your mind stretch, wander, and breathe. Welcome to your night of philosophy. Welcome to your journey from level 1 to 100. Let's begin together. Part 1: Perception and Reality. Have you ever wondered if the life you're living right now is truly real? I know, that sounds like the start of a science fiction movie. But take a moment to really think about it. When you open your eyes each morning, you see the world as you've always known it, the soft glow of sunlight through your curtains, the smell of fresh coffee, the buzz of notifications reminding you that the day has begun. But what if all of this is just a shadow? Let me take you back to an ancient story, one that's as relevant today as it was over 2,000 years ago. Plato's allegory of the cave. Imagine people chained inside a dark cave since birth. They can't turn their heads, and all they've ever seen are shadows projected on the wall in front of them. To them, those shadows are reality, the only reality they know. One day, one prisoner is freed and dragged out of the cave. At first, the sunlight blinds him, it's painful, overwhelming. But slowly, he starts to see the world beyond, trees, rivers, the vast sky. He realizes that what he saw in the cave were mere illusions, echoes of a truer, deeper reality. Now imagine he goes back to the cave to tell the others. They laugh at him. They refuse to believe. Why? Because it's easier to cling to the comforting familiarity of shadows than to face the blinding truth. Isn't that so human? How often do we settle for the shadows in our own lives, illusions of success, illusions of happiness defined by someone else? We stick to them because they're safe, even when deep down, we know there might be more beyond that wall. And this idea of reality, of who we really are, leads us to another fascinating question: the ship of Theseus. Picture an ancient ship, proudly sailing across the sea. Over time, each plank of wood begins to rot, and the sailors replace each piece one by one. After many years, not a single original plank remains. The question is it still the same ship? And if we took all the original planks and rebuilt another ship with them, which one is truly the real ship of Theseus? This isn't just about boats, it's about you and me. Our bodies change cell by cell. Our beliefs evolve, our dreams shift, our identities transform. Are we still the same self we were 10 years ago? Or even yesterday? This idea challenges us to look at identity not as something fixed and permanent but as something fluid, something that evolves with time. It invites us to embrace change rather than fear it. After all, maybe you are not the person you once were, and that can be liberating. Then comes a more urgent, practical dilemma: the trolley problem. Imagine this: a runaway trolley is hurtling down a track towards 5 people who are tied up and unable to move. You're standing next to a lever. If you pull it, the trolley switches to another track, where only one person is tied up. Do you pull the lever, actively causing one person's death but saving 5? Or do you do nothing and let the trolley kill the 5? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? We love to think of morality as black and white, but life often hands us messy, impossible choices. This thought experiment forces us to confront the weight of our actions, and our inactions. And then there's an even darker twist: what if instead of pulling a lever, you had to push a large man off a bridge to stop the trolley? Most people instinctively refuse, even though the numbers are the same. Why? Because it feels different to directly cause harm. The trolley problem is more than a philosophical puzzle, it's a mirror into our moral instincts, showing us that our ethical compass is not purely logical, but deeply human, shaped by emotions, fear, and empathy. Next, let's explore a question that has haunted thinkers for centuries: are we truly free? Or is everything predetermined? Determinism tells us that every event, including every decision we make, is the inevitable result of prior causes: our upbringing, our environment, even the laws of physics. In this view, free will is an illusion. We think we're choosing, but in reality, we're following a script written long before we were even aware of it. But what about free will? The belief that we have the power to choose, to shape our destiny, to rise above our circumstances? Without it, How can we hold anyone responsible for their actions? How can we praise heroism or condemn wrongdoing if no one truly had a choice? Some thinkers try to find a middle path, compatibilism, suggesting that while certain factors shape us, we still have meaningful choices. We are not completely free, but we are not entirely bound either. Think about your own life. How many decisions have you made because you felt you had to? And how many because you truly chose them? When you look back, do you see a pattern? Or does it feel like a series of conscious, deliberate steps? Lastly, we arrive at a deeply personal feeling, existential angst. It's that deep, gnawing anxiety that comes when we realize life has no pre-written meaning. There is no cosmic manual telling us who to become or what to achieve. The universe is silent. Imagine standing alone in a vast open field at night, staring up at the endless stars. You feel small, maybe even insignificant. And yet, at that moment, you also sense a raw freedom, the freedom to define your own purpose. Some people run from this feeling. They bury it under work, entertainment, or even faith, hoping to find a ready-made answer. Others face it head-on and see it as a gift. Existentialists argue that the lack of inherent meaning isn't a curse, it's an opportunity. Because if life has no given purpose, it means we get to choose. We can create meaning through our actions, our relationships, our passions. But with that freedom comes responsibility. The responsibility to decide what matters. The responsibility to own our choices and live authentically. Have you ever felt that anxiety? The restless wondering, am I on the right path? What if I'm wasting my time? What if I'm not living fully? These are not easy questions. But they are the questions that make us human. When you face them honestly, you're no longer just existing, you're truly living. In these concepts, Plato's cave, the ship of Theseus, the trolley problem, determinism and free will, existential angst, we see reflections of ourselves. Our struggles, our fears, our hopes. They remind us that reality is not always what it seems, that our identity is fluid, that morality is messy, that freedom is complicated, and that meaning is something we must build, not something we can find waiting for us. So tonight, or whenever you listen to this, I invite you to sit with these questions. Not to solve them all at once, maybe not ever, but to let them shape you, open you, guide you toward deeper self-understanding. Maybe tomorrow, when you look in the mirror, you'll see more than just your reflection. You'll see a person in constant becoming. A person questioning. A person alive. Because the real magic of philosophy isn't about having the answers. It's about learning to live with the questions, and discovering who you become along the way. Take a deep breath. Let these ideas sink in like the soft glow of the moonlight. And remember, in the quiet spaces between the questions, that's where you find yourself. Part 2, Meaning and Meaninglessness. Have you ever felt that life might be meaningless? I don't mean in a dramatic, movie-ending kind of way, I mean in those quiet, late-night moments when you look up at the ceiling and wonder, why am I here? What's the point of all this? If you felt that, you're not alone. There's a philosophy called nihilism, and it faces this question head-on. Nihilism boldly declares that life has no inherent meaning. There's no grand cosmic script, no universal scorecard, no invisible judge keeping track of your successes and failures. On one hand, this realization can feel devastating. If nothing matters, then why bother getting out of bed? Why chase dreams or fall in love? Why do anything at all? But here's the thing, nihilism also offers a strange kind of freedom. If life has no built-in purpose, then you get to decide what matters. You get to choose your own values, your own goals, your own reasons to keep moving forward. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, empty field. At first, the emptiness is terrifying. But then you realize, you have a blank canvas. You can build, plant, explore, the possibilities are endless. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned against passive nihilism, the kind that drags you into despair and paralysis. Instead, he encouraged what he called active nihilism, where you boldly create your own meaning in the face of the void. It's as if the universe handed you an empty book and said, write whatever story you want. What story would you write? Now let's move to another mind-bending perspective, solipsism. At first glance, solipsism might sound like a science fiction plot twist. What if you are the only real consciousness in existence? What if everyone else, your friends, family, strangers at the grocery store, are simply projections of your own mind? Think about it. You only experience the world through your own senses and thoughts. You can never fully step into someone else's mind. You can never prove that anything beyond your consciousness truly exists. It sounds lonely, even frightening. But it also forces us to appreciate just how deeply personal our reality is. When you're angry, the world feels hostile. When you're joyful, the world feels full of possibilities. Your perception literally shapes your world. Rather than sinking into isolation, solipsism can remind us of the power of our inner world. If your mind is the only certain thing, then caring for your mental state, nurturing kindness, gratitude, curiosity, becomes the most essential act of all. Have you ever noticed how your entire day can change depending on your mindset? One small shift inside can transform everything you see outside. Next, let's tackle a haunting question that has troubled theologians and philosophers for centuries: the problem of evil. If there is an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving God, then why is there so much suffering in the world? Why do innocent people endure pain? Why do natural disasters, disease, and violence exist? Some argue that suffering is necessary for growth, that it shapes us, teaches us resilience, and helps us appreciate joy. Others suggest that free will is the price of a meaningful life. If we are truly free, then the potential for evil must exist. Yet when we face immense personal tragedy or witness injustice on a global scale, these explanations can feel hollow. Have you ever asked yourself, why me, or why them? Maybe in moments when you lost someone you loved or when you felt betrayed by life. There may never be a fully satisfying answer. But grappling with this question pushes us to examine our beliefs, our capacity for compassion, and our willingness to take responsibility for alleviating suffering where we can. Perhaps the universe is indifferent, and it's up to us to create pockets of kindness, to be each other's source of light. And now, let's talk about something seemingly simple, but deeply profound: the paradox of the heap, also known as the Sorite's paradox. Imagine you have a large heap of sand. You remove one grain, it's still a heap, right? Remove another, and another, at what point does it stop being a heap? When is it just a pile? Or simply scattered grains? Or think about hair: when does a person become bald? After losing one hair? 10? 1,000? These questions reveal how our language and concepts are often vague and imprecise. We love to think in black and white, but reality is full of blurry edges and gradual changes. This paradox isn't just a quirky brain teaser, it mirrors so many aspects of life. When does a relationship go from just friends to something more? When does a job become a calling? When does self-improvement become self-obsession? We often want clear lines, but life rarely offers them. The world is a spectrum of shades and subtle transitions. Learning to embrace this ambiguity can free us from the need to label everything too quickly. It teaches us patience, flexibility, and the humility to accept that not everything fits into neat little boxes. So, what does all this mean for us? Nihilism challenges us to define our own meaning. Solipsism reminds us that our reality starts and ends in the mind. The problem of evil forces us to confront suffering and decide how we respond. And the paradox of the heap teaches us that life is full of slow changes that we must learn to navigate without rigid judgment. These ideas aren't here to paralyze you or make you feel small. They're here to invite you deeper into yourself. To encourage you to live with more curiosity and courage. What would your life look like if you embraced the freedom that comes with creating your own meaning, rather than waiting for someone to hand it to you? What if you saw your mind not as a prison but as a vast universe to explore, where every thought shapes your reality? What if, instead of fearing suffering, you saw it as a call to cultivate more kindness and understanding, for yourself and for others? And what if, instead of demanding clear answers, you learned to dance in the gray areas, to find peace in the in-between? When we face these philosophical challenges, we don't necessarily arrive at a final answer, and maybe that's the point. Perhaps the value is not in solving every question but in living them. In carrying these questions into our daily lives, into our morning coffee, our evening walks, our quiet conversations with loved ones. At the end of the day, philosophy isn't some distant, dusty discipline locked away in books. It's a living, breathing practice that shows up every time we choose how to respond to the chaos of the world. every time we decide what matters most. Every time we choose to love, to forgive, to keep going despite it all. So tonight, or whenever you find yourself listening to this, I invite you to sit with these ideas. Let them seep into your mind like soft rain on thirsty soil. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to fix everything or have the perfect philosophy for life. You just have to keep asking, keep exploring, and keep showing up for your own story, grain by grain, moment by moment. Because maybe meaning isn't something we find at the end of a long journey. Maybe it's something we build, piece by piece, in every small act of courage, in every quiet choice to keep going, and in every moment we decide to care, even when it hurts. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Remember, in this vast, mysterious universe, you are both the question and the answer. And that might just be the most beautiful paradox of all. Part 3: Mind, Perception, and Morality. Have you ever wondered what makes you, you? Is it your body, the hands that type, the heart that beats? Or is it something deeper, something invisible, your thoughts, your memories, your hopes? This question has haunted philosophers and scientists for centuries, and it brings us to the debate between dualism and monism. Dualism tells us that the mind and body are two distinct things. The body is physical, made of cells and bones, following the laws of nature. The mind, your consciousness, your inner voice, is something separate, perhaps even eternal. This idea offers a comforting possibility, that our true self might transcend the physical. That even when the body fades, our essence might continue in some way. On the other hand, monism says that everything is one. The mind is not a separate entity floating above the body, it is the body. Your thoughts, your emotions, they're simply patterns of neurons firing, chemical signals dancing in your brain. If this is true, then consciousness is a beautiful illusion created by biology. We're not ghosts in a machine, we are the machine. Which one feels more true to you? Do you feel like a mind piloting a body, or do you feel like one unified being? As we reflect on this, we begin to see how deeply our understanding of ourselves shapes everything we do, including how we see morality. And that brings us to moral relativism. Imagine you're traveling across the world. In one country, eating with your left hand is considered rude. In another, it's completely normal. In some cultures, speaking your mind is a sign of honesty, in others, it's seen as disrespectful. Now stretch this idea further. In some societies, certain actions are celebrated as virtues. In others, the same actions might be condemned as sins. Moral relativism tells us that there is no single, universal, right or wrong. Our ideas of good and bad are shaped by where we're born, the stories we hear, the traditions we inherit. This can feel unsettling. If there's no ultimate moral truth, how can we stand up for justice? How do we condemn cruelty or oppression if everything is relative? But it can also open our hearts. It teaches us humility, the awareness that our perspective is just one of many. It invites us to listen, to learn, to question whether our moral compass is truly ours or simply borrowed from those who came before us. Now, imagine for a moment that you came into this world with no ideas, no biases, no learned fears. Just a blank canvas. This is the idea behind tabula rasa, or blank slate. John Locke suggested that when we're born, our minds are empty, pure potential, waiting to be shaped by experience. Every memory, every lesson, every heartbreak, every joy becomes a brushstroke on this blank canvas. It's a powerful idea because it means we are not prisoners of destiny or genetics alone. We are sculptors of ourselves. Think about your own life. Who shaped you? Which experiences painted the brightest colors on your canvas? Which moments left deep, dark marks? And which new colors might you choose to add today? But life isn't always about building and creating. Sometimes, it's about confronting the cold, uncomfortable truth that the universe might not care about us at all. This brings us to the concept of the absurd. Picture this, a tiny human standing alone beneath a sky full of stars, asking, "Why am I here?" The universe doesn't answer. It remains silent, vast, indifferent. We crave meaning. We look for signs. We hope the universe will send us a message, a purpose written in the stars. But what if there is no message? What if the universe is as silent as a blank page? Philosophers like Albert Camus didn't see this as a tragedy. Instead, they saw it as an invitation. If life has no inherent meaning, then it's up to us to create our own. It's like being given a stage with no script. Scary? Yes. But also freeing. You get to decide what story to tell. Camus imagined Sisyphus, forever pushing a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down each time. Instead of seeing him as cursed, Camus saw him as free, because he embraces his task, and in that acceptance, he finds his own meaning. So ask yourself, what is the boulder you push every day? Do you push it because you're told to, or because you've chosen it? Finally, we arrive at a haunting, yet strangely motivating idea: eternal recurrence. Friedrich Nietzsche asked us to imagine this: what if you had to live your life over and over again, exactly the same way, for eternity? Every joy, every pain, every mistake, forever. Would you celebrate this idea, or would it terrify you? This thought experiment isn't meant to scare us. It's meant to challenge us. Are we living in a way that we would be willing to repeat, again and again? If today was the first of infinite repetitions, would you spend it the same way? Would you say the same words to your loved ones? Would you chase the same dreams? Eternal recurrence pushes us to embrace every moment deeply, to live as though every choice echoes into eternity. It asks us to love our fate, not just the good parts, but the heartbreaks, the failures, the small, hidden moments of grace. When you think about these ideas together, dualism and monism, moral relativism, tabula rasa, the absurd, eternal recurrence, you start to see a pattern. They all point back to one central, powerful truth: we are more free than we think. We are free to decide who we are. Free to question the moral codes we inherited. Free to paint new colors on our canvas. Free to face a silent universe and still choose to sing. Free to live each day as though we would choose it again and again, forever. Philosophy isn't about solving life's puzzles once and for all. It's about stepping into them, living inside the questions, and discovering who we become when we dare to look deeper. So tonight, or wherever you are in your journey, I invite you to pause. Ask yourself, am I living a life I'd want to relive for eternity? What colors do I want to add to my canvas? Where did my ideas of right and wrong come from, and do they still serve me? Do I see my mind as separate from my body, or are they one beautiful, messy, inseparable whole? And most importantly, what meaning am I choosing to create today? Take a slow, deep breath. Let these questions echo softly inside you, like ripples across a quiet lake. Remember, there is no rush to answer. Sometimes, simply holding the questions is enough. In this vast, mysterious, and sometimes absurd existence, you have the power to choose, to change, to create. And maybe, that is all the meaning we need. Part 4: Politics and Society. When we think about philosophy, we often imagine it as something deeply personal, questions about meaning, identity, or the nature of reality. But philosophy isn't just about us as individuals. It's also about us as a collective, how we live together, how we build societies, and how we decide what's fair and just. Have you ever wondered why we follow rules? Why we pay taxes, obey traffic lights, or line up at the grocery store? It might seem obvious, but beneath those daily habits lies a powerful and ancient idea: the social contract. The social contract is a theory that suggests society isn't just a random collection of people, it's a kind of agreement. Imagine for a moment that humans lived in a state of nature. No laws, no governments, no police, no judges. Just pure freedom. At first glance, that might sound thrilling. You could do whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. But what would life actually look like? The philosopher Thomas Hobbes believed that without a social contract, life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In a world without rules, the strong could easily dominate the weak. There would be no security, no trust, and no shared progress. So, we, consciously or not, give up some of our absolute freedom in exchange for protection and order. We agree to follow certain laws so that we can live without constant fear. We contribute to common resources, like paying taxes, so we can enjoy shared benefits, like roads, schools, and hospitals. This contract isn't always written down, but it's there. It's what holds society together. But what makes this agreement fair? Here's where the veil of ignorance comes in, a thought experiment introduced by philosopher John Rawls. Imagine that before you're born, you have to design the rules of a new society. But there's a twist: you don't know who you'll be in that society. You might end up rich or poor, healthy or sick, powerful or marginalized. You could be anyone. Behind this veil of ignorance, you can't stack the rules in your own favor because you don't know what your favor will be. So, what kind of society would you build? Most of us, if we didn't know where we'd land, would create a system that's as fair as possible. We'd want basic rights protected for everyone, opportunities for all, and a safety net for the most vulnerable. This thought experiment forces us to see beyond our current privileges and biases. It challenges us to design society not as it benefits me, but as it protects everyone. Now, let's move to a question that quietly sits at the core of many moral and political debates: the is-ought problem, introduced by philosopher David Hume. Here's the idea in simple terms: just because something is a certain way doesn't mean it ought to be that way. For example, we might observe that humans have always formed hierarchical societies, where a few hold power and many follow. That's the way it is. But does that mean it should always be like that? Or think about aggression. In nature, many animals fight for dominance. That's the way it is. But should we, as humans, accept violence as an unchangeable part of our lives just because we see it in nature? The is-ought problem warns us against the lazy logic of assuming that what is natural is automatically good or justified. It pushes us to think carefully before turning facts into moral rules. Just because a tradition has been followed for centuries doesn't mean it's ethical today. Just because an economic system has worked in the past doesn't mean it serves justice now. If you look closely, you'll see this tension everywhere, in debates about gender roles, environmental policies, criminal justice, and countless other issues. We often hear arguments like, "That's just the way things have always been," as if that settles the matter. But the is-ought problem reminds us that we must consciously decide what kind of world we want, not just accept the world as it is. So, what does all this mean for you and me, living in a world that feels more divided than ever? First, it means recognizing that society is not a given, it's something we create together. Every law, every custom, every unwritten rule is a choice, and it can be re-examined and changed. Second, it means questioning how much of our moral thinking is shaped by our position in society. Do we support certain rules because they're truly fair? Or because they protect our own comfort? Third, it means daring to imagine a fairer world, and asking ourselves what rules we would write if we didn't know our place in it. Imagine if tomorrow you woke up in a different body, in a different community, with different opportunities or limitations. Would you still feel that the systems around you are fair? Would you still say, "That's just how it is," or would you demand better? It also invites us to see beyond division. Political and social debates often turn into shouting matches, each side certain they're right. But what if we approach them from behind the veil of ignorance? What if, instead of fighting to protect our side, we tried to build something fair for all sides? That doesn't mean ignoring our personal experiences or pretending we don't have perspectives. It means adding empathy to our reasoning, imagining the lives of others as if they could be our own. And finally, it challenges us to act. To move from is to ought. We might say, there is poverty. But what ought we do about it? We might say, there is injustice. But what ought we build to stop it? We might say, people are divided. But how ought we bridge those divides? Philosophy doesn't give us easy answers. It gives us better questions, questions that make us uncomfortable, that push us out of complacency, that call us to see each other not as strangers or enemies, but as fellow authors of this social contract we all share. In the end, the social contract, the veil of ignorance, and the is-ought problem all lead us back to one essential truth: we are responsible for the world we create. Every small choice, every silent consent, every vote, every act of kindness or cruelty, they're all strokes on the canvas of our shared story. So, as you go about your day, maybe take a moment to imagine what kind of society you would build if you didn't know your place in it. Would you design it differently? Would you protect different people? Would you rethink what is fair, what is right, what is truly necessary? When we dare to ask these questions, we move beyond just living in a society, we start actively shaping it. That's the power of philosophy. It's not just about lofty ideas in dusty books. it's about how we show up in the world. It's about how we decide, together, what kind of future we want to wake up to, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Take a breath. Feel the weight and the possibility of these questions settle in your heart. You don't need to solve them all tonight. But if you let them guide you, even in small ways, you might start to see your place in society, and your power to shape it, in a whole new light. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't only, what is? The deeper, braver question is, what ought we become? Part 5, Pleasure and Existence. When you think about what makes a good life, what comes to mind first? A fulfilling career? A loving family? Adventures in faraway lands? Or maybe, simple pleasures, a warm cup of coffee on a rainy morning, laughter with friends, the feeling of sun on your skin. At the heart of this question lies an ancient and controversial idea called hedonism, the belief that the pursuit of pleasure is the highest good, the ultimate goal of life. For some, this sounds selfish or shallow. But if we look deeper, we might see something more human, even beautiful, in it. Imagine if every decision you made was guided by one simple question: will this bring me joy? Will this add light to my life? Of course, not all pleasures are equal. Hedonism doesn't necessarily mean indulgence in endless parties or constant luxury. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus believed that the deepest pleasures come from simple things: friendship, freedom from pain, and a calm mind. He argued that once our basic needs are met, chasing more and more rarely makes us happier. Instead, learning to enjoy what we already have can be the greatest pleasure of all. So, what brings you true joy? Is it something big and flashy, or something quiet and subtle? Next, let's move to a very different kind of question, one that blends faith and reason: Pascal's wager. Imagine you're betting on whether God exists. Blaise Pascal, a 17th-century philosopher and mathematician, suggested that believing in God is the safer bet. Here's his logic: if you believe in God exists, you gain everything, eternal happiness. If you believe in God doesn't exist, you lose very little. But if you don't believe in God does exist, you risk losing everything. In other words, even if we can't prove God exists, it might be rational to believe, just in case. This wager isn't really about faith in the spiritual sense, it's more about a cost-benefit analysis of belief. Some criticize it as shallow or insincere. After all, can true faith really be based on a bet? But it does challenge us to consider, what are we willing to stake our lives on? What beliefs shape our choices, even when there's no proof? What bets are you making every day, on people, on dreams, on yourself? Now, let's turn inward to one of the most famous statements in philosophy: cogito ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am. René Descartes wrote this in the 17th century while he was searching for something absolutely certain, something no doubt or deception could shake. He realized that even if he doubted everything, even if he was being tricked by some evil demon, the very act of doubting proved that he existed. I think, therefore I am. At first glance, it might sound abstract. But it's actually deeply empowering. When everything around you feels uncertain, your job, your relationships, even your place in the universe, you can return to this one solid truth: you are a thinking, conscious being. No one can take that away from you. So, when was the last time you paused and simply noticed that you exist, beyond labels, beyond roles, beyond the endless rush? Next, let's dive into a puzzle that has challenged theologians and philosophers for centuries: the Euthyphro dilemma. Is something good because God commands it? Or does God command it because it is good? If something is good only because God says so, then goodness seems arbitrary. God could declare anything good, and we would have to accept it. But if God commands something because it is inherently good, then goodness exists independently of God, which raises the question: what, then, is the true source of morality? This dilemma pushes us to think deeply about where our moral compass comes from. Is it divine, universal, cultural, or personal? It also invites us to examine our own values. Do we do the right thing just because someone or something tells us to? Or because we've reflected and decided it truly aligns with our deepest sense of good? Finally, we arrive at an idea that invites balance and harmony into our lives: the golden mean. Aristotle believed that virtue lies between two extremes. Think of courage: too little courage is cowardice, too much is recklessness. the virtuous path is the balanced middle. Or generosity, too little is stinginess, too much is wastefulness. This principle encourages us to seek moderation, not in a boring, mediocre sense, but as a way to live wisely and sustainably. In our modern world, where more is constantly sold as better, the golden mean is a radical invitation to pause and ask, how much is enough? We often chase extremes, extreme success, extreme productivity, extreme pleasure. But what if the deepest fulfillment is found not at the peaks, but in the gentle, steady middle ground? Imagine your life as a tightrope walk. Lean too far one way, and you fall. The art is in the balance, the graceful dance of holding steady even when the wind blows. So, what does all this mean for you and me, right now? Hedonism asks us to honor pleasure, but also to understand which pleasures truly nourish us. Pascal's wager challenges us to consider what beliefs we build our lives upon, and what we're willing to risk. Cogito ergo sum reminds us that even when the world feels unstable, our consciousness, our ability to think and reflect, is an undeniable foundation. The Euthyphro dilemma invites us to examine the source of our morals and to take ownership of our ethical choices. And the golden mean teaches us that the most beautiful life might not be the loudest or the most extreme, but the one lived with mindful balance. These concepts aren't just academic theories. They are quiet guides, whispering to us in moments of doubt and choice. When you savor a simple joy, you're practicing hedonism in its purest form. When you weigh your beliefs, you're making wagers about what truly matters. When you question your morals, you're wrestling with the Euthyphro dilemma. And every time you choose moderation over excess, you're living the golden mean. Take a moment now. Close your eyes. What pleasures light up your heart? What beliefs anchor your spirit? What choices are you making today that shape your tomorrow? What would it look like to live not at the edges of life, but at its vibrant center, balanced, thoughtful, deeply alive? You don't have to answer it all tonight. Just carry the questions with you. Because maybe, in the end, a good life isn't about finding all the right answers. Maybe it's about asking the right questions, savoring each moment, and choosing again and again to exist, fully and consciously. Take a deep breath. You are here. You are thinking. You are alive. And that is a beautiful beginning. Part 6, Science and Logic. Have you ever noticed how much we crave certainty? We want to know why things happen, why people act the way they do, why we feel certain emotions. We want clear answers, clean explanations, something solid to hold onto in a world that often feels chaotic. That's where science and logic come in, tools that help us cut through confusion and get closer to the truth. One of the most famous tools in this search for clarity is Occam's razor. Imagine you come home and see a glass of water knocked over on the table. One explanation is that your cat jumped up and knocked it down. Another is that a tiny invisible alien visited your house just to push the glass. Occam's razor suggests we choose the simpler explanation, in this case, the mischievous cat. This principle doesn't guarantee truth, but it reminds us that when faced with competing explanations, the one that makes the fewest assumptions is usually best. In a world overflowing with conspiracy theories, misinformation, and overcomplicated stories, Occam's razor feels like a breath of fresh air. It invites us to pause and ask, am I adding unnecessary complications? Is there a simpler way to understand this? But simplicity isn't the only principle that guides us. There's also the principle of sufficient reason, which suggests that everything must have a reason or cause. When we hear a noise in the middle of the night, we don't just think, oh, it's random. We look for a reason, maybe it's the wind, or maybe the cat is up to mischief again. This principle has driven scientists and philosophers to dig deeper, to never accept just because as an answer. It's what pushes us to explore the universe, uncovering the reasons behind gravity, evolution, or consciousness itself. But what happens when even our reasons fail us? Enter the Gettier problem. Traditionally, we believe that knowledge is justified true belief. If you believe something, have good reason for it, and it turns out to be true, that's knowledge. But philosopher Edmund Gettier showed us that you can have a justified true belief and still not truly know. Imagine you look at a clock that stopped exactly 12 hours ago. By pure chance, you glance at it now, and it shows the correct time. You believe it's noon, and you're right, but are you really knowing or just lucky? Getier's examples reveal the fragile line between knowledge and coincidence. They teach us humility, that even when we think we know, there might be hidden cracks in our reasoning. Speaking of reasoning and action, let's move to the moral sphere with the categorical imperative, proposed by philosopher Immanuel Kant. This principle invites us to act only according to rules we'd be okay with everyone following universally. Imagine you're tempted to lie to get out of trouble. Ask yourself, would I want to live in a world where everyone lies whenever it benefits them? If the answer is no, then don't do it. This is more than just a rule, it's a compass for living ethically, even when no one is watching. It challenges us to move beyond self-interest and think about the bigger picture, the kind of world our actions help create. In a society obsessed with shortcuts and individual gain, the categorical imperative feels radical. It asks us to step outside ourselves, to consider not just what we can get away with, but what is genuinely right. Finally, let's dive into one of the most mind-bending puzzles of all, the mind-body problem. What exactly is the relationship between our physical brain and our conscious mind? We know that thoughts and feelings seem to arise from brain activity. But how does electrical and chemical activity turn into the rich, colorful experience of being alive, the taste of chocolate, the pain of heartbreak, the feeling of nostalgia? Some argue that the mind is just what the brain does, no mystery, just biology. Others believe consciousness might be something more, something that can't be reduced to neurons and synapses. This question isn't just for philosophers and neuroscientists. It touches each of us deeply. When you meditate or lose yourself in music, when you feel, in flow, doing something you love, is that just brain chemistry? Or is there something else, something intangible and profound? The mind-body problem invites us to explore the mystery of our own being. It reminds us that, despite all our scientific advances, there are still realms we barely understand. So, what can we take away from these big ideas? Occam's razor urges us to seek simplicity, to clear away unnecessary clutter in our thoughts and explanations. The principle of sufficient reason pushes us to look deeper, to refuse easy answers and keep asking, why? The Gettier problem teaches us to be humble, to recognize the limitations of our certainty, and to stay open to new information. The categorical imperative challenges us to act not only for ourselves but for the world we're helping to shape, moment by moment. And the mind-body problem invites us to hold space for wonder, to accept that some mysteries are not yet, and maybe never will be, fully solved. Imagine walking through your day carrying these ideas like quiet companions. When you hear a rumor, you might ask, what's the simplest explanation? Am I adding unnecessary complexity? When you face a moral choice, you might pause, what if everyone acted this way? What world would that create? When you feel certain about something, you might gently remind yourself, could there be a hidden factor I'm missing? When you marvel at a sunset or feel the warmth of a hug, you might wonder, what is this incredible blend of body and mind that lets me experience this moment so deeply? Philosophy isn't about memorizing old texts or debating for the sake of debate. It's about living more thoughtfully. It's about seeing each moment, each choice, each feeling as part of a larger story, one we're all writing together, whether we realize it or not. You don't have to be a scientist or a scholar to use these ideas. You just have to be curious. You just have to care enough to pause, to question, to wonder. And maybe, in doing so, you'll start to see not just the surface of your life, but the rich, intricate layers beneath, the reasons, the choices, the connections that make you uniquely you. Take a breath. Feel your heart beating. Feel your mind buzzing with questions. That's the beginning of wisdom, not having all the answers, but being brave enough to keep asking. You are the scientist of your own life. The philosopher of your own heart. The explorer of your own mind. So tonight, or wherever you are listening, take these questions with you. Hold them softly. Let them shape you. Because in the end, a life of simple curiosity and honest reflection might be the most beautiful experiment of all. Part 7, Habits, Society, and Being. Have you ever promised yourself you'd start a new habit, maybe to eat healthier, wake up earlier, or finally learn that language you've been putting off, only to find yourself slipping back into old patterns a week later? There's a word for this in philosophy, akrasia. Akrasia describes that strange, frustrating gap between knowing what we should do and actually doing it. We know we should exercise, but we hit snooze. We know we should be patient, but we snap in traffic. We know we should save money, but we click Add to Cart anyway. Why does this happen? Because we're not purely rational creatures. We're bundles of emotions, habits, and impulses shaped by thousands of tiny moments. This doesn't mean we're doomed to fail. It means we need to understand ourselves more deeply, to approach change with compassion rather than self-criticism. When we realize that willpower isn't an on-off switch but more like a muscle that strengthens over time, we stop blaming ourselves and start building small, consistent steps. So, next time you slip up, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Instead ask, "What systems can I create to support the person I want to become?" Now, let's zoom out from the individual and look at society as a whole. Philosophy isn't just about personal choices, it's also about how we live together, how we evolve, how history unfolds. This brings us to dialectical materialism, a concept rooted in Marxist philosophy. At its core, dialectical materialism suggests that history progresses through conflicts driven by material needs. Think of it like this: each era of human society emerges from tensions between rich and poor, between new technology and old systems, between what is and what could be. Rather than seeing society as a static structure, this perspective encourages us to view it as alive, constantly changing through struggle and contradiction. It challenges us to question: are we passive observers of history, or active participants shaping its direction? Are we okay with the status quo, or are we willing to confront the friction necessary for meaningful change? Next, let's explore a fascinating thought experiment called the experience machine. Imagine there's a machine that can simulate any experience you want. Once plugged in, you could live out a perfect life, endless love, success, adventure, all tailored exactly to your desires. Would you choose to plug in and live in that illusion forever? At first, it sounds tempting. But many people hesitate. Why? Because we crave authenticity. We want our achievements to be real, our relationships genuine, our pain meaningful. A life without struggle might feel empty, like a story without conflict or growth. The experience machine forces us to ask, what really matters to us, feeling good at all costs, or living a life that feels real, even if it includes pain? This ties beautifully into utilitarianism, a moral philosophy suggesting that the best action is the one that maximizes happiness for the greatest number of people. On the surface, this sounds simple: do what creates the most joy. But life is messy. Whose happiness counts most? What if increasing overall happiness means sacrificing individual rights? For example, imagine a policy that makes 90% of people slightly happier but deeply harms 10%. Is that acceptable? Utilitarianism asks us to weigh consequences carefully, to think beyond our own immediate comfort and consider the collective well-being. It challenges us to see our decisions not as isolated acts but as ripples that spread far beyond ourselves. Finally, we arrive at a paradox that bends the mind, Zeno's paradox. Zeno argued that motion is impossible. Imagine a runner trying to reach the finish line. First, they must get halfway there. Then, they must get halfway of the remaining distance. Then halfway again. According to Zeno, this division continues infinitely, so technically, the runner should never arrive. Of course, we see people finish races all the time. But Zeno's paradox isn't really about stopping runners. It's about challenging our assumptions about space, time, and movement. It invites us to think more deeply about the nature of change. How do we actually move from point A to point B, not just physically, but in our lives? When you set a big goal, it can feel overwhelming, like there are infinite steps before you ever arrive. But what if, instead of focusing on the impossible infinite, we focused on the next small step? And then the next. By breaking big challenges into manageable halves, or even smaller pieces, we make motion possible, progress real. So, what do all these ideas teach us? Acracia reminds us that knowledge alone isn't enough, we must design lives that support our intentions. Dialectical materialism teaches us that society is a living, evolving organism, and we're part of that unfolding story. The experience machine challenges us to seek genuine experiences over shallow pleasures. Utilitarianism encourages us to think collectively, to weigh the happiness of all rather than just our own. And Zeno's paradox pushes us to break big, scary goals into small, doable steps. Taken together, these concepts invite us to live more consciously, to see our habits, our choices, our place in society as interwoven threads in a larger tapestry. Imagine approaching your day with this mindset. When you slip up, instead of punishing yourself, you adjust the environment to support your better habits. When you see injustice, you remember that history moves through conflict and that your voice matters. When tempted by easy escapes, you choose real connection, real growth. When making decisions, you consider not just your happiness but the happiness of the whole. And when a goal feels unreachable, you focus only on the next small step. Philosophy isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions and living those questions every day. You don't have to solve all of humanity's problems today. You don't have to become a flawless version of yourself overnight. You just have to keep moving, one step, one choice, one breath at a time. Take a moment now. Think about a habit you've struggled to build. What small change could make it easier? Think about the world around you. What small act could ripple out and create more joy for others? Think about your goals. What is the very next small step you can take today? Breathe in. Breathe out. You're already moving forward, even if you can't see it yet. And that is the quiet, powerful magic of being human. Part 8: The Universe and Existence. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt both tiny and infinite at the same time? Maybe you stood under a blanket of stars and wondered, why is there something rather than nothing? Why do we exist at all? These questions have fascinated thinkers for centuries. And one idea that tries to make sense of it is called the anthropic principle. It suggests that the universe appears to be fine-tuned to allow life, especially conscious life, to exist. If certain physical constants were even slightly different, stars wouldn't form, planets wouldn't orbit, life as we know it wouldn't be possible. Some see this as evidence of design, perhaps by a creator or some higher intelligence. Others think it simply means we shouldn't be surprised. After all, we're here asking the question because this universe is the one in which beings like us can exist. It's like waking up in a hotel room and marveling that the bed fits your body so perfectly, but of course it does. If it didn't, you wouldn't have stayed there in the first place. The anthropic principle invites us to appreciate the delicacy of existence, to marvel at how impossibly precise the conditions for life are. But it also reminds us that perhaps we are not as central to the story of the universe as we think. Maybe we are just one chapter in an endless cosmic book. Next, let's play with a classic brain teaser, the liar paradox. Imagine someone says, "I am lying." If they're telling the truth, then they must be lying, but if they're lying, then they must be telling the truth. This playful paradox reveals the limitations of language and logic. It shows us that even simple statements can become tangled webs of contradiction. In daily life, we often crave neat, clean truths. But the liar paradox suggests that reality, and even truth itself, might be more slippery than we like to believe. How often do we trap ourselves in our own mental loops? Promising ourselves one thing, then contradicting it. Saying, "I'll start tomorrow," but tomorrow never comes. The liar paradox isn't just a puzzle, it's a mirror. It reminds us to be humble about our words and to recognize how easily we can deceive ourselves. Now let's turn to a problem that affects every plan we make, the problem of induction. Induction is when we predict the future based on past experience. We assume the sun will rise tomorrow because it always has. We believe our car will start in the morning because it did yesterday. But what if, one day, it doesn't? David Hume famously questioned whether we can ever truly justify inductive reasoning. Just because something has happened countless times before doesn't guarantee it will happen again. This is unsettling. It shakes the foundation of science, habit, and trust in the world. Yet, despite this uncertainty, we keep going. We continue to plan weddings, book flights, build cities. Perhaps that's a beautiful act of faith, an everyday courage to move forward despite not having absolute guarantees. Speaking of testing our assumptions, let's talk about falsificationism. Proposed by philosopher Karl Popper, falsificationism says that for a scientific theory to be meaningful, it must be testable and capable of being proven wrong. For example, if I claim, "all swans are white," this can be tested, and falsified, by finding a single black swan. But if I claim, "invisible fairies make the flowers bloom," there's no way to prove or disprove it scientifically. Falsificationism protects us from falling into dogma. It reminds us that true science thrives on questioning, on poking holes, on being open to disproof. In life, How often do we hold on to beliefs that can't be challenged? Ideas about ourselves, I'm just not creative, or I can't change, that go untested and unchallenged. What would happen if we approached these stories like scientists? What if we looked for evidence that could prove us wrong and, in doing so, open ourselves up to growth? Finally, let's dive into one of the most poetic ideas in science, the butterfly effect. It suggests that tiny changes can have massive, unpredictable consequences. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil might set off a tornado in Texas weeks later. While that's a metaphor, it illustrates how interconnected everything is. A kind word to a stranger might ripple out, affecting their entire day, and who knows how far beyond that. A single decision, to move cities, to start a new hobby, to say yes to an opportunity, can alter the entire trajectory of a life. Sometimes we feel small and powerless, but the butterfly effect reminds us that our actions, no matter how small, can matter in ways we can't even imagine. Think about this: how many times have small, seemingly random events shaped your life? Meeting someone by chance who becomes your best friend. Reading a book that changes how you see the world. Missing a bus and discovering a new favorite coffee shop. These moments are like butterfly wings, gently guiding us in new directions. So, what do all these cosmic and logical puzzles mean for us? The anthropic principle urges us to appreciate the delicate conditions that allow us to exist. The liar paradox humbles us, showing us the limits of our language and logic. The problem of induction challenges us to embrace uncertainty and move forward anyway. Falsificationism inspires us to keep questioning our assumptions, to hold our beliefs lightly, to stay open to growth. And the butterfly effect reminds us of the surprising power of small actions. Together, these ideas invite us to live with wonder, curiosity, and a gentle awareness of the ripple effects we create. Imagine waking up tomorrow with this mindset. Looking at the morning sun not just as another day, but as a miracle of cosmic precision. Speaking words carefully, knowing they can twist and turn in unexpected ways. Stepping into uncertainty with courage, planning and dreaming even without guarantees. Challenging the beliefs that hold you back, asking, what if I'm wrong, and what new possibilities might that open? And making small choices with love, trusting that even the smallest kindness might grow into something beautiful far beyond your view. We may never fully understand the universe. We may never solve all these paradoxes. But perhaps that's not the point. Perhaps the point is to keep asking, keep moving, keep creating tiny ripples that shape the world in ways we'll never fully see. Take a deep breath. Feel the wonder of being here, now, in this improbable moment. You are part of a story so vast it stretches beyond stars, beyond atoms, beyond words. And in that story, every small act, every quiet question, every gentle choice, matters. That's the quiet, magnificent magic of existence. Part 9, Consciousness and Being. Have you ever looked around and wondered, what if none of this is real? What if this moment, your room, your coffee, your morning jog, is part of a sophisticated simulation, like a hyper-advanced video game designed to trick us into thinking we're living a real life? That's the simulation hypothesis. It suggests that we might be living inside an artificial reality, created by a future civilization so advanced they can run entire worlds on their supercomputers. Think about it, our technology already lets us create virtual worlds. Video games today are so immersive that we can lose ourselves for hours. If we continue advancing, who's to say one day we won't be able to simulate conscious beings who believe they're real? It's a mind-bending thought, and it leads to a powerful question. If life is a simulation, does that make it any less meaningful? Would your love feel less real? Would your struggles matter less? In many ways, even if we are inside a simulation, the feelings, connections, and choices we make are deeply real to us. Maybe that's what truly matters. Now let's talk about something that touches all of us: skepticism. Skepticism is the philosophical practice of questioning whether we can truly know anything for certain. Can you be sure the world you see is the same as what others see? Can you trust your senses? Your memories? Imagine you're dreaming. In the dream, everything feels real. Only when you wake up do you realize it was an illusion. What if life itself is a kind of dream we just haven't woken up from? Skepticism doesn't mean giving up on truth. It's about staying curious and humble, recognizing that our knowledge is always limited and incomplete. Rather than leaving us feeling lost, skepticism can inspire us to keep searching, to keep refining our understanding of ourselves and the world. Next, let's explore a question that messes with our sense of time: eternalism versus presentism. Eternalism suggests that past, present, and future all exist equally, like pages in a book that are all there, even if we're only reading one page at a time. Presentism, on the other hand, argues that only the present moment is real. The past is gone, the future hasn't happened yet, all that exists is now. Think about how we talk about time: I can't wait for the weekend, or I wish I could go back to that day. Do these moments still exist somewhere out there? Or are they just shadows in our minds? If eternalism is true, every moment you've ever lived, every laugh, every heartbreak, still exists somewhere in the fabric of reality. If presentism is true, then the power of life lies fully in this moment, right now, in the beating of your heart and the breath in your lungs. Whichever view resonates with you, it challenges us to think more deeply about how we use our time and how we cherish each fleeting second. Now, let's shift to one of the oldest and most debated arguments for God's existence, the ontological argument. In simple terms, it suggests that if we can conceive of a perfect being, a being that possesses every possible perfection, then that being must exist. Why? Because existing is more perfect than not existing. It's a tricky, almost mathematical line of reasoning. Some find it deeply convincing, others see it as a clever word game. But whether or not you accept it, the ontological argument invites us to reflect on the nature of existence itself. What does it mean to exist? Can we think something into being? Can the mere idea of perfection hint at something beyond ourselves? Beyond theology, this pushes us to think about what we consider real and how our concepts shape the way we see the world. Finally, let's dive into a fascinating puzzle about parts and wholes, the Mariological paradox. Imagine a car. We think of it as a single object. But it's actually a collection of parts: tires, seats, engine, mirrors. At what point do those parts become a car? If you remove one mirror, is it still the same car? What if you remove the engine? The paradox challenges us to think about identity and composition. You, too, are a collection of parts: cells, organs, memories, experiences. Which parts make you, you? If your cells regenerate, if your thoughts change, if your body transforms, are you still the same person you were 10 years ago? This question isn't just philosophical. It touches on how we see ourselves, how we change, and how we hold on to, or let go of, different parts of our identity. When we put all these ideas together, the simulation hypothesis, skepticism, eternalism versus presentism, the ontological argument, and the Mariological paradox, we're left with a profound invitation. To question everything, not as a way to fall into despair, but as a way to wake up to the wonder of existence. What if reality is a simulation? Then maybe what matters is the authenticity of your feelings and connections. What if we can't know anything for sure? Then maybe the journey of seeking is more meaningful than finding final answers. What if all time exists at once? Then maybe your favorite memories aren't lost, they're part of a timeless tapestry. What if existence itself is woven into the very fabric of our concepts? Then maybe what we imagine shapes what we become. What if you are both a whole and a collection of countless changing parts? Then maybe the art of living is learning to dance with that constant flux. Take a breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel the beating of your heart, the hum of life, the miracle of consciousness moving through you. These questions might not have final answers. But they give us something even more valuable: the chance to live more awake, more present, more in love with the strange, fleeting, beautiful experience of being human. You don't need to solve the paradoxes tonight. You don't need to answer every cosmic question today. Just let them walk beside you. Let them deepen your curiosity, soften your judgments, and expand your sense of what's possible. Maybe, in the end, it's not about discovering whether we're in a simulation or whether time is eternal. Maybe it's about realizing that we are here, right now, capable of loving, wondering, creating, and growing. And in that simple, powerful truth, there is more magic than we could ever imagine. Part 10: Language and Ethics. Have you ever been in a heated debate about politics, ethics, or even something as simple as your favorite movie, and suddenly wondered, is any of this really worth arguing about? If you have, you've already brushed up against a fascinating idea in philosophy called quietism. Quietism suggests that many philosophical problems aren't worth endless arguing. That sometimes, instead of getting lost in endless loops of who's right or what's true, the wiser move is to step back, breathe, and accept the mystery. It doesn't mean giving up on thinking deeply or caring about truth. It means recognizing that some debates don't lead anywhere productive and that peace of mind might be more valuable than winning an argument. In a world that constantly pushes us to have opinions on everything, to comment, to debate, to clap back, quietism invites us to consider the power of silence. Have you ever felt that relief of simply choosing not to engage? Of realizing you don't have to have a stance on every single thing? Sometimes, the greatest wisdom is knowing when to let go. Now, let's move to a deeper layer, metaethics. If ethics asks, what should I do, then metaethics asks, what does should even mean? Is morality something objective, like gravity, existing outside of us whether we believe in it or not? Or is it subjective, shaped by our cultures, emotions, and personal experiences? Metaethics questions the very foundation of our moral judgments. When we say something is wrong, are we stating a universal fact, or are we just expressing our personal feelings or cultural conditioning? Imagine two people from different cultures disagreeing about a moral issue. Who is right? Is there even a right in this context? These questions don't always have clear answers, but they push us to be more thoughtful, humble, and compassionate when we navigate moral disagreements. Speaking of questioning reality, let's explore the argument from illusion. This idea suggests that because our senses can deceive us, we shouldn't always trust our perceptions. Think about optical illusions, two lines that look different lengths but are actually the same. Or a mirage in the desert, making you think there's water when there isn't. Our brains interpret the world, but sometimes they get it wrong. What if all of life is, in some way, an illusion? What if the truth we cling to is simply our mind's best guess? Rather than making us cynical, this realization can open us up to more curiosity and less judgment. If my perspective might be flawed, perhaps I should listen more carefully to yours. If what I see might not be the whole story, maybe there's more room for kindness and patience in how I approach disagreements and misunderstandings. Next up, the open question argument, proposed by philosopher G. E. Moore. He argued that you can't simply define moral goodness as a natural property, like happiness or pleasure. If you say, good means maximizing happiness, you can still reasonably ask, but is maximizing happiness really good? Meaning it's always an open question. This suggests that moral terms like good can't be fully reduced to scientific or natural facts. There's always room for further questioning. This argument encourages us to keep exploring the depths of morality rather than assuming we've found the final formula for right and wrong. It teaches us that living ethically is less about memorizing rules and more about continuous reflection, honesty, and self-inquiry. Finally, let's talk about something you might not expect to see in a philosophy video, literature, specifically, the idea known as the death of the author. Traditionally, we thought the author's intention defined a text's meaning. But Roland Barthes argued that once a work is published, its meaning belongs to the reader. It's no longer about, what did the author mean, but what does this mean to you? Think of your favorite song. The artist may have written it about heartbreak, but for you, it might represent hope or a new beginning. The death of the author empowers us to find personal meaning, to let art and life speak to us directly. It also parallels how we interpret our own experiences. When something happens to you, do you only see it through the lens of what was intended? Or do you allow yourself to find new, personal meanings that help you grow? Imagine approaching your life story as a reader, not just a character bound by the author's or fate's intentions. What chapters would you reinterpret? What lines would you highlight, circle, and read again? When we weave all these ideas together, quietism, metaethics, the argument from illusion, the open question argument, and the death of the author, we get an invitation to live more freely, more gently, and more creatively. Quietism asks us to let go of arguments that drain our energy and to find peace in not always needing an answer. Metaethics challenges us to look deeper into why we believe what we believe, to question the foundations of our moral compass. The argument from illusion humbles us, reminding us to be cautious with our perceptions and to hold space for other viewpoints. The open question argument keeps us curious, always exploring rather than settling into rigid moral formulas. And the death of the author empowers us to become active readers of our own lives, to find and create meaning beyond what we were supposed to see. Imagine waking up tomorrow with this mindset. When you hear a heated argument online, instead of jumping in, you pause and ask, do I need to engage? Or can I find peace in stepping back? When you feel certain about a moral stance, you reflect, where did this come from? Could there be more to understand? When you doubt your senses or judgments, you listen more openly, knowing that perception is always partial. When you struggle to define what's good, you allow it to remain an open question, a journey rather than a destination. When you look at your life story, you remember that you're not just a passive character, you're also the reader, the interpreter, the one who gets to find new layers of meaning. Take a slow breath. Feel the freedom in not needing to know everything. Feel the curiosity that comes from realizing life is more about exploring than concluding. And feel the empowerment of knowing that every day, in small ways, you get to shape what your story means. Maybe, just maybe, that is the most profound philosophy of all. Part 11, Identity and the Self. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, who am I, really? Not just your name or your job title, but the core of you. The you beneath all the labels, expectations, and stories. Let's start with a strange but beautiful principle called the identity of indiscernibles. It says that if two things are identical in every possible way, they aren't really two things, they're one and the same. Imagine two snowflakes that are perfectly identical in every tiny detail. In theory, they would be the same snowflake. Now think about people. Even if two people seem similar, they like the same music, wear the same clothes, have the same habits, they're still not truly identical. Because each of us carries an inner world, private thoughts, subtle emotions, tiny scars from past experiences that no one else can ever fully see. This principle reminds us that no matter how similar we seem on the surface, each of us is irreplaceably unique. Next, let's explore something that blows open the mystery of being alive, the hard problem of consciousness. We know the brain processes information, it reacts, stores memories, controls the body. But why does that lead to the experience of being? Why do we feel joy when we see a sunset, or heartbreak when we lose someone we love? Why aren't we just biological robots running on autopilot? This is the hard problem, explaining why and how physical processes in the brain create subjective experiences, the feeling of what it's like to be you. Some scientists think we'll solve it with enough research. Others believe it might be a mystery forever, something magical at the core of being human. Either way, it invites us to appreciate the everyday miracle of simply being aware, to feel the warmth of a hug, to savor a favorite song, to notice a moment of stillness. Now, let's zoom out to the scale of the whole planet with the Gaia hypothesis. This idea suggests that Earth itself acts like a single, self-regulating organism. Think about how forests breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, how oceans regulate temperature, how ecosystems find balance. It's as if all the plants, animals, and natural systems work together to keep the planet stable, much like cells in a body keep us alive. This perspective reminds us that we're not separate from nature, we're strands woven into a vast living web. When you walk barefoot on grass or swim in the ocean, you're not just visiting nature, you're reconnecting with a part of yourself. Then, there's a very human problem that comes up in every society, the free rider problem. It's when someone enjoys the benefits of a system without contributing to it. Imagine a group project where one person does all the work, but everyone gets the same grade. Or someone who uses public services but refuses to pay taxes. At first, it might seem clever or harmless. But if too many people do it, the system collapses. This problem challenges us to think about fairness, responsibility, and community. What does it mean to be a good citizen, a good neighbor, a good friend? It reminds us that real freedom isn't just about doing whatever we want, it's about balancing our rights with our responsibilities to others. Finally, let's look at the lottery paradox. Imagine you know there's a 1 in a million chance you'll win the lottery. You believe you won't win, and that's reasonable. But if everyone thinks this way, someone still ends up winning. This paradox highlights the tension between individual rational beliefs and collective outcomes. In life, we often think in terms of probabilities, that dream is too unlikely, or people like me don't get opportunities like that. But sometimes, even improbable things happen. Someone does win. Someone does break through. Someone does live out that wild, impossible dream. Why not you? When we combine all these ideas, the identity of indiscernibles, the hard problem of consciousness, the Gaia hypothesis, the free rider problem, and the lottery paradox, we're left with a powerful invitation. To see ourselves as both deeply unique and intimately connected to everyone and everything around us. To remember that simply being conscious is an ongoing miracle worth savoring. To understand that we are threads in a vast, breathing tapestry called Earth, and that our actions ripple through this web in ways we can't always see. To recognize that freedom carries responsibility, that to truly thrive, we must support the systems and communities that hold us up. And to believe that even if the odds seem small, we can still dare to dream, to act, and to hope. Imagine waking up tomorrow with this mindset. You look in the mirror and see not just a face, but a living story, a one-of-a-kind consciousness that no one else will ever replicate. You walk outside and feel the air, the sunlight, the heartbeat of a planet that cares for you, even as you care for it. When you face a choice, to take or to give, to stay silent or to speak up, to play it safe or to leap, you remember the delicate balance between your own freedom and the good of the whole. And when that quiet voice inside you whispers, "Don't bother, you'll never make it," you answer back, "Someone has to win. Why not me?" Take a slow, deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground, your mind alive, your heart open. You are a single note in a cosmic symphony, and yet, without your note, the song wouldn't be the same. In the end, identity isn't just about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself, moment by moment, choice by choice. And maybe that is the most beautiful paradox of all, that in a world of 7 billion people, there has never been, and will never be, another you. Conclusion. If you've made it this far, take a moment to thank yourself. Seriously, pause for a second. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. You just traveled through an entire universe of ideas, from ancient caves to modern labs, from cosmic theories to intimate questions about who you are. We explored paradoxes that twisted our minds and questions that tugged at our hearts. We examined concepts that made us laugh, sigh, and maybe even sit in quiet wonder. From Plato's cave to the butterfly effect, from the hard problem of consciousness to the simulation hypothesis, each concept we visited wasn't just a dusty philosophical theory. It was a doorway, an invitation to see your own life in a new light. And that's the magic of philosophy. Many people think philosophy is just abstract talk, long, complicated books or arguments that never end. But what if philosophy isn't about reaching a final answer at all? What if it's about learning to live with better questions? Imagine looking at your life not as a puzzle to solve once and for all, but as a beautiful, evolving mystery to explore each day. When you face a setback, instead of asking, "Why me?" you might start asking, "What can this teach me?" When you feel stuck, instead of demanding immediate answers, you might whisper, "What new perspective could help me grow here?" Throughout this journey, we've collected ideas like stars in a night sky. Each one shines a little differently, each one offers a different kind of light. We talked about free will and determinism, about whether time flows like a river or stands still like a painting. We considered if we are living inside a simulation, and what it means to be truly alive even if that's true. We questioned whether morality is universal or shaped by culture, whether pleasure is the highest good, and whether meaning is something we find or something we create. We asked, if we had to live our lives over and over again, would we choose the same actions? Are we part of a living earth, like cells in a giant organism? Can a single small choice ripple out and change everything? These questions don't have simple, one-size-fits-all answers. And that's okay. In fact, that's the point. Philosophy isn't here to hand you a neat checklist for happiness or a final verdict on how to live. It's here to help you see, to open your eyes to the incredible richness and complexity of existence. It's here to help you step outside of autopilot and ask, what really matters to me? It's here to invite you to become a conscious participant in your own life story. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who gets to decide what meaning your life holds. You are the one who gives weight to your experiences, who interprets your memories, who chooses how to respond to the mysteries around you. And that's powerful. That means you don't have to have it all figured out today, tomorrow, or ever. You just have to keep asking. Keep reflecting. Keep choosing. Imagine carrying these questions with you tomorrow morning as you sip your coffee, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're lying in bed thinking about your future. Imagine looking at your ordinary moments as extraordinary opportunities to practice awareness, gratitude, and curiosity. When you laugh with a friend, when you hold someone's hand, when you feel the wind on your face, you are living philosophy in that moment, whether you realize it or not. That's because philosophy isn't only about thinking. It's about living. It's about showing up each day as a curious, awake, evolving human being. It's about daring to ask the questions most people avoid. It's about having the courage to look inside yourself and say, who am I? Who do I want to be? And what does it mean to live a good life? These aren't easy questions. They're lifelong companions. But maybe, just maybe, the act of carrying them, of walking hand in hand with them, is what gives life its deepest meaning. As we come to the end of this journey together, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to have all the answers to live fully. You just need to stay open. Stay humble. Stay willing to keep exploring. Because in the end, it's not about arriving at some final destination of truth. It's about the journey of becoming, of discovering new layers of yourself and the universe every single day. So take a breath. Feel that pulse of life inside you. That is the ultimate miracle, the simple fact that you are here, alive, and aware enough to even ask these questions. Thank you for being part of this exploration. Thank you for daring to think deeply, to feel deeply, and to grow. Until next time, keep wondering, and keep becoming.